Hello, everybody. Glad to see you here. This is the first time I've done a YouTube live ever. Believe it or not. Also, I'm streaming to Facebook, my personal page, and to my X account. So I wanted to speak about a book series, but a book that has meant a lot to me since I was in my early 20s, at least. And that book series is considered to be one of the greatest book series of all time in science fiction, written by Frank Herbert, called Dune. At least the first book is called Dune, and that's what you saw in the theaters with Denis' attempt to bring us the Dune book in two parts. And the first movie was accepted quite well by the fans and by non-fans alike, made good money, and they green lit him for a second Dune, which just was released March 1st. These books, reading them first go around, were profound because of what they brought up inside of me. And you're going to get some spoiler alert. So if you're really not wanting to know anything, then you need to stop listening, because if you want to see that second movie, or you have already seen it, you know, uh, fine, stay around. But if you haven't seen the first one and the second one, don't stick to this broadcast. I'll give away things you don't want to know. So we're living in a time right now, just to recap how I see what's going on. We live in a time where you have very powerful forces that certainly are currently, and some could argue have been for a long time, trying to guide humanity like cattle into certain outcomes. It's not organic in its unfolding. It's very manipulated by people who think they have greater oversight and vision for what humanity should be. And so what you're going to get is this cattle gate type of prowling going on. And we have the threat of nuclear war. We have all kinds of drugs that we're supposed to be fighting against and controlling, and yet there's all kinds of evidence that we've actually been behind the scenes pushing those drugs in manufacturing and distribution to create addiction. And then you can control those who are addicted to a thing, and by taking the thing they're addicted to, you can manipulate them into doing whatever you want them to do. All of that is going on right now, I think, right in this time in history. The health countermeasure that was pushed so heavily in the last 2 years, 2+ years now, I guess, has certainly altered the course of humanity and what human even is anymore. If you go by what's happening inside of over half the planet who received the countermeasure, it did change them. Even if you're one of those people like, look, I've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, how many of those health countermeasure infusions, and you're like, I feel fine, I'm great. There's hardly been anybody I've ever felt who had at least one, if not many of them, that I can't feel that you don't feel the same way that you did. Organ systems, the how they're working, bioenergetic structure, you don't feel the same way that you did before you had them. Because I do a little thing where I go back in time in your field and keep pulling up the information as I ask for it back in time, and I can compare before you had it and now that you have it. So we have this influence going on in humanity. We have a collapsing of the US dollar, which hasn't been worth anything in a long time, not really. So you see all these points that you probably maybe you'd agree with most of those, and we're really cruel to each other. Oh, and we're being told if we're going to keep AI from taking over who we are as humans, we need to then join AI by getting past the barrier of communication, which is our thumbs or our fingers, and going ahead and having chips put into us so we can then link directly to the technology that we're working with, and also AI. Now, you're catching all that, right? Why am I giving a recap of how I see what's been going on? Because that's what Dune is about. Frank Herbert, who wrote, I think the first book came out in 1965, and I believe he lived up in the corner of the world, the lower 48 states that Angel and I lived for a couple of years in Oregon, which was the peninsula of the state of Washington. And he lived out there in what I consider to be the most beautiful place in the lower 48 states. And he had that, and he had dunes, some sand dune access in Oregon. Just south, of course, of the Washington state border is Oregon. So this is where he lived, I think, a lot when he was cooking up the idea of Dune. So in the story of Dune, we have all of those pieces, ingredients I just mentioned that we're facing right now. are all interlaced in the books and now the movies, the two-part, 1 and 2 parts of Dune, all there. You have, you have addiction. You have an overarching force trying to guide humanity. Then you have even a deeper, more long-sighted chess-playing group of people who are trying to guide humanity through the long term, the long haul, many thousands of years. Then you have all the people who are subject to all this, and you have religious fervor and all kinds of things that are very similar to today. So, first, I'll answer this in case you're wondering. Do I think, yeah, Frank goes raw mineral extraction, absolutely. Do I think that the Dune 1 and 2 movies first were good? Oh my gosh. Denis, who is a French Canadian director, he did Arrival and other movies. He did a number of the movies. The names are slipping my mind. They'll come to me soon. He did a fantastic job. He was a lover of the books when he was like 14 until now. He's 54, I think, at this point. He's loved those books and the material. Thought Frank Herbert was a genius writer, and his love shows through the creation of Dune 1 and 2. You should see it, even if you have no book background whatsoever, no story background. You should see it. I'll give you a small recap, though, and you may not want to hear all this because I do give away some things. But you have multiple planets that are, I'm not going to use all the words in the book because it just gets confusing, but you have a bunch of planets with different, of course, cultures, all humanoid, some related to each other, one planet to the other. And there's this huge dependency on this particular subject, this raw herb, raw mineral, not ether really, that's on a planet, a desert planet called Dune, or it's also called Arrakis. Now, this crazy thing, this substance is called spice, right? There's Frank. It's called spice. And this spice, when taken, extends life. Like if it were available here, even knowing that once you're addicted, you can't get off of it without it probably killing you. The withdrawal will kill you. Your body becomes so dependent on it. But people wanted this spice, whether they lived on Dune. Most did not want to live on Dune because it's such a harsh climate. And all the other planets around there were all dependent on the spice because it extended your life. Right, Caroline? The spice extended your life. It made you kind of impervious to the things that normally kill us. So everybody was addicted to it, and taken in large enough doses, it allowed space travel navigation to take place in this fictitious world made by Frank Herbert, because instead of traveling, you've heard the challenges that you'll hear Elon Musk and many say about space travel. It's slow. We're bound by certain principles we can't seem to escape, and human beings can't handle the direct exposure of the radiation, different kinds of radiation, traveling through space without having very protected environments and so on. So what did he do inside of the Dune books? You want to go from here to here, and Frank's solution was you just take it like, here, I've got a piece of paper. I'll just show you. Hang on one second. Don't leave because you don't see my face. Here we are, okay? All right? I want to go from here to here. So why would I travel straight across space for thousands of light years to get from here to here when I can just create a machine that will fold space, and I go from this side and just move right over to that side, and space unfolds, and I have traveled the distance in a fraction of the time. The problem is, to end up leaving one place and arriving at the folded place on the other side, you had to have this impeccable navigation. So what they did is they took human beings who would volunteer, I think that was volunteer, for a program where they would bathe in the spice to the point that they had special abilities to navigate space with their minds, their powers of prediction and navigation with the mind. And they could fold space and not end up landing in the middle of another ship, a planet, an asteroid, whatever, but always precisely where they needed to go and not cause any harm to anyone, right? But why do this? I'm getting to my point. Looks like my Wi-Fi is failing again. Wow. Let's see if it's going to catch up. Gosh, I hate this. It goes out like that, and it's not getting any better. Ah. Okay, I think it's improved now. I think it caught up. All right. You're asking probably, Keith, but why would you in this world of Frank Herbert's not use computers to navigate? Why wouldn't you use AI? Because many, 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 many years ago, there was a massive war in this group of planets around the fact that AI was absolutely dominating what was happening with all of them. It was taking over. And so through this war, they outlawed all of the thinking machines. No one was allowed to make a machine that could think anymore because of the dangers of them. And I'm not going to go into that backstory. There have been books written to explain that, pre-DUNE books written by Frank Herbert's son, who took over the writing of the story after Frank died. Does this sound familiar? A group of planets where AI got so out of control, they basically had a Terminator type of experience from the AI attacking humanity. And when the humans won, they're like, never again are we doing it. No more. And so humans had to become the thinking machines. Those that had the capacity would become thinking machines called mentats. And you had these special humans that had bathed in the spice so much and ingested so much that their limbs changed into almost amphibious type limbs and expression, and they could navigate space like I described to you a minute ago. All the thinking machines are gone. Humanity had to go back to relying on its own natural abilities that were then directly given attention to in order to develop fully, which is what we say that we want to do. But the machines are no longer involved. That was a mistake. See how the parallels are there? So when we're talking about why a movie like Dune 1 and 2 would go so well, even to people who aren't familiar with the material, I think it's because when you're watching these movies, you can see the parallels. And nuclear warheads were a major thing. In fact, in the story of Dune movies 1 and 2, nuclear warheads are implemented by what we think is the hero. And here's the point. Here's the point of Dune 1 and 2. Here's supposedly why Frank Herbert says he wrote those books. It is not about a hero. Now, when I read these books when I was in my 20s, it did ignite in me this feeling so deeply down inside of me that I could feel it just coming from my core, that something inside of me needed to awaken. Because in the books, he says to his dead father, "Father, the sleeper has awakened." He can feel that part of himself, that potential that finally was coming to life, and it was going to allow him to develop his full potential. And I could feel that speak to me as a young man. But I had no idea, Caroline, so how this was going to unfold in my life. I just knew that it changed who I wanted to be. But you find out soon as you're reading those books and watching these movies that this character of Paul and how he goes from a planet that's very ocean-based to having his family transplanted to this dune planet to take over the production of this addictive, life-extending substance called spice, and they were being set up for failure. And Paul was eventually going to become the fulfillment of a religious prognostication that was given many, many hundreds of years before to this planet, to the people who lived there naturally, the Fremen, the free man, the free women, the Fremen. They had been seeded this idea that a Messiah would come and rescue them from the continual persecution from those that were occupying Arrakis, to come in and forcefully take the spice out of there so they could sell it to all the other planets and have a corner of the market, or corner the market. So Paul's family shows up. This other house, this other planet is removed by the emperor over all these planets. And then Paul's family, the Atreides, are put there instead to be overlords or overseers of this planet. However, Paul's father, who was the Duke, told the Fremen leadership, at least one of the leaders, he said, "I do not want to do to your people here on this planet what this past house, the Harkonnens, did to you. We are not brutal. We are not going to treat you this way. We're going to treat you fairly. We're not going to step on your turf any more than we have to get the spice and get out of the desert, the deep desert. We're never going to attack you. We're not going to poach you. You live your lives. In fact, we'd like to have an alliance, a very different approach. And of course, this was, a wary position taken by these native people of this desert planet because they've been treated so badly before. So they have this idea, right? These oppressed people who have this promise that's in their folklore, that some of them believe more than others, that a Messiah is coming to rescue them. All of this has been set up. And Paul's family is coming there. And he is very special indeed because his mother is part of the controlling group in this multi-planet collective. They're called the Bene Gesserit witches. And these women are bad to the bone. They have total control over their biochemistry. They understand the idea of bioenergetics, which is a growing field that is going on in the Western world now at this point. They had the ability to basically control men through sex, or they could kill them because they were expert assassins. These were the most complete, absolute, well-rounded, truly human beings in the universe, the known universe. However, they were hurting humanity through a genetics program of crossbreeding certain people groups, certain lines of people, to produce the ultimate weapon, because these Bene Gesserit had these reverend mothers, the overseers of the Bene Gesserits, and they had the ability to have connection to this line of the women in their history, this lineage that they could draw on as all these voices of experience, this body, this morphic genetic field of knowledge they could tap into and have great wisdom from the past. However, they believed through genetic manipulation that one day they would create a male, and this male would have the ability to see in the past, like the Reverend Mothers could, and also see in the future. Well, they suspected Paul could be the Kwisatz Haderach. This is the Kwisatz Haderach is this particular one anomaly that would be able to foresee everything in the future as well in the past, and that would give him the ability to guide humanity. And they wanted to control this group of women, this one person they were trying to bring into reality through their own breeding program. They think Paul is it. His family goes, the Atreides family, his family goes to this desert planet to oversee the spice production. And without going into a whole lot more detail, because I don't want to give away too many things, and it's boring for me to recap something you can read or watch, Paul ends up being the fulfillment, certainly by the belief of a lot of these native people of this DUNE planet, this Arrakis planet, that he is the Messiah. He is the one promised to come to them and to save them from their oppression. Pick an oppressed people group who've had this promise made to them. How many people right now feel like you are a part of the oppressed humanity and you are waiting for some type of messianic figure to come and rescue humanity, or at least rescue the people who are following that particular messianic figure? That's what these people were waiting for. And Paul fit the message. His mother fit the prophecy. And she should, because she was also one of the Bene Gesserit witches. She had been trained by this long line of guiding overseers, watchers of humanity that were guiding through all kinds of methods, through politics and religion and science and sex, and the ability to manipulate and be the voice in the ears of some of these leaders, including the emperor who was over all these planets. He had a Bene Gesserit witch in his ear guiding his actions so he could have the outcome he wanted. All the while, though, ultimately, these Bene Gesserit witches, they are guiding their own desired outcome. Everyone else is a pawn. Now you're watching Paul, this young man who's on this desert planet, start to fulfill the predictions that were given by this group of women. And he starts to step into it. He takes this special kind of poison that is found only on this planet, that all of the Reverend Mothers go through to create their great connection to their history and their lineage. He takes it as well as his mother, who she then becomes the Reverend Mother of that planet Dune. Even though she's an off-worlder by birth, she becomes a Fremen Reverend Mother, their leader in that way. But the true spiritual leader is going to come through Paul when he ends up taking the same thing that has killed every man that's ever tried to have it, to take it. They cannot transmute the poison, but he does. And it awakens in him the ability to have sight in both directions. And he only sees one pathway for humanity to survive. Because humanity, follow guys, I'm telling you this not because of a recap of the story, but what's going on in our world right now. Humanity in his sight, his new sight, is stagnating. And that stagnation is going to lead to vulnerabilities. And that vulnerability, or those vulnerabilities, will eventually lead to the extinction of humanity. Ooh, Frank, don't even make Star Wars references when we're talking about Dune. Star Wars was a cheap, nasty, shallow bubblegum copy of the magic of Dune, Frank. People make the analogy all the time. So, with Paul starting to step in and fulfill this role, he realizes that from his position, that he only has, out of all the infinite pathways humanity could take, there's only one very narrow path that he can lead down this special road called the Golden Path. Only that path can lead to humanity not stagnating the point of that kind of vulnerability and then extinction. The only path for humanity to carry on. I've seen some analysis of these movies and the Paul character going, well, he's a selfish little butthole that only is looking out for what he wants. But that's not what I get from reading the books and even watching these first two movies. Is he taking some selfish steps? He is. But he's also doing it, he believes, because there's only one pathway that he can lead humanity through that we actually continue on. And so that is what is also a motivator for him. So Frank Herbert wrote the Dune books, certainly the first three that complete the arc of the story of Paul Atreides. The first three out of a total of 6 that Frank wrote. The first 3 are about the Paul Atreides arc. And Paul's story is not one of a beautiful, flourishing young man into a messianic figure who saves humanity. Unfortunately, it's a cautionary tale, is what Frank would say was, look, folks, religion and religious fervor and zealots lead to very, very dangerous situations by placing that kind of responsibility and weight and power on one individual. Even if that individual means well, to give that kind of power in your life, to give your power away to one person, to dictate your every move, whether it's life, death, and how you're going to live that life until you give your life possibly up because that messianic figure requires it. You need to think about this long and hard because this story doesn't end well. For those of you who haven't read the Dune books, you only know the point at Dune 1 and 2 at the theaters by Denis that Paul ends up becoming wed to the emperor's daughter, the princess, so he can take over that position as emperor. And yet the other planets are going, we don't want you to do that. We don't want you to take over Shaddam, the emperor's position as emperor. We don't want you to step in the place of this guy. Who made you boss? He's like, fine, because you either succumb or I'll root you out, and you will succumb through force. And when they won't give over that reign, that crown to him, he says, fine, I've got all this whole planet of millions of warriors who are going to now visit all of you until you are under the thumb of the banner of my house name Atreides. For I am Muad'Dib, I am the chosen one, I am the messianic figure, I am the emperor. And that's where the second film ends. Of course, I'm leaving so much out because I want you to read it and or watch the movies if you haven't. So what does this have to do with today? I see so many people, whether it's through politics or through religion, placing your power and responsibility and accountability on a messianic figure that's going to come and save the day. It's going to turn all this around for humanity. We're going to get med beds. We're going to get all this money is going to be given to us. It's our money rightfully anyway. And all the white hats are going to take over. And because they're already been working behind the scenes. And we're going to get Trump back in office. And all this is going to go great for humanity because he's the messianic figure. Now, even if all of his intentions are pure, do you really think that it's a good idea to give that kind of power in your life to one man? I don't think that's wise. I think that's what Frank Herbert was telling us. Now, wrap that up, because Paul Atreides, Muad'Dib, his Fremen name, that was not just a political figure. He wasn't just going to become the emperor. He was also a religious figure. He was like Jesus wrapped up with Trump. If you're living in the United States right now, we're wanting Trump to take over and be our political savior, who God has appointed. The anointing of God is on the Trumpster. He's going to come and save humanity. Oh yeah, let's not forget about Jesus, because Jesus is going to come too, and Jesus is going to sometime real soon, because all the signs are there. Jesus is going to come and rescue all of us from the great end of the world, the great tribulation, the absolute the coming apart of all of what we know is going to be destroyed. But if you're one of the Protestants out there who believe in the rapture, it's okay. God's not going to put you through that. You're special. Jesus is going to come and take you out of here and then destroy everything, then put you back in again. You get spared from all that. But if you're from the older faiths versions of Christianity, there's no such ark coming to save you from anything. You're going to go through it no matter what. Do you see what I'm saying? See what's happened? Paul Atreides in those books is to bring it to right now. For some people, you've got Trump, your political savior, and you got Jesus, your religious savior, all blended into one individual in those Dune books. And what you have the author, Frank Herbert, saying is, that's a bad idea. Let me show you what happens. Because in those books, in the movies, billions of people across those planets die, all at the hands of him and his holy jihad, as it's called in the book and the movies. It's a very big warning. And when people read that book, Dune, Frank Herbert realized, crap, people aren't getting the message. I was pretty heavy-handed in it. Harry says, Paul was interested in the evolution of humanity, but terrified of a jihad in his name. However, he utilized any and all resources at his command to this end. Paul wants to get humanity back in touch with the secret chiefs. Yeah, it's a good synopsis that Harry's got going on there. I mean, Paul doesn't want billions to die. He doesn't want that to happen in his name. But he sees, as Harry is saying here, he sees this, what looks to be an inevitable outcome. He tries to keep it from happening. There's certain decisions he makes to try to keep it from being so bloody. But he realizes there's no way to do that. And that golden path is going to require a lot of bloodshed in his family's name, in his name. And I think that's what we're looking at right now, is basically a message of that I think that Frank was giving. This is what I always took from it. Frank Herbert was saying, don't give your power away to any one person. In fact, don't give your power away, period. How can you live the potential that your life has if you're living it putting all of it in the hopes on somebody else, putting your energy that could be going into your life and living it and those around you, serving those around you, you're putting it into a figurehead. I think that's what Frank was saying. Eric says, no more terrible disaster could befall your people than for them to fall in the hands of a hero. Exactly it. That's what we're being told. Or putting your power into the hands and becoming lazy in the hands of AI and where that's going. These are all tools. But it's a matter of what are you going, again, as the story always goes, what are the tools going to do in your hands? What is the outcome of that tool in your hands? How are you going to choose to embody your potential and your potential power in your life, or are you going to take the easy way out and just put all of that onto somebody else? Because as you think about another person, as you put praise on another person, as you put adoration on another person, as you put your will into the hands of another person, you're giving all of your life to someone else. This can happen outside of the obvious dynamic of sycophant and messianic figure. This can happen anywhere in your life where you are, instead of being this beautiful, bold, and powerful, and gentle, and compassionate, stabilizing force for all those around you, to me, that's the ideal. Instead, you end up becoming, I'm going to invest all of my energy, my life force is going to flow into everybody else around me so that they can have what I think they need or what they're demanding, to the detriment of me losing my own identity. I have no idea who I am anymore. I have dispersed into those that I serve. And I would dare say that there's a balancing act here and a point of balance that needs to be found so you can keep that in your sights. If we can go through the sacred decision, which is what Paul went through, if you want to look at this point in the early part of that first movie, where the mother, the Reverend Mother, hears about some of the things about Paul from his mother and these different dreams he's having and certain signs that are showing that he could have the potential to be the one. She shows up, this Reverend Mother shows up there on Caladan, their home planet, their watery, ocean-filled planet, to test him. And she says for him to put his hand into this box. It's a very plain looking box. And without actually damaging him, which he doesn't know if this is damaging him or not, he can just feel what he feels. She ignites this process, activates this process of nerve induction pain, where he feels like his hand is slowly becoming more and more charred and burnt until it's an ashen, crispy little set of digits that's left. And at least that's what it feels like. And she has a needle, this Reverend Mother, a poison needle called the Gom Jabbar, right there at his neck. So if he flails around and hits it, he's dead. And the question is, are you going to be an animal and lose control over your emotions and your reaction to the pain and thrash around and have death? Or are you going to be a human? Because a true human can overcome those animalistic reactions and you'll respond in a way that is from choice, which shows that you're truly a human and not like the rest of these so-called humans who are really animals. That's what she's basically saying from my take on the whole context of that scene of the test. And he passes the test and he gives her a look in the movies. He's giving her this look like, I'm finding something inside of me that I didn't know was there, and it's starting to come alive in your little process there by putting me into that degree of pain and me having to exercise that degree of control over my body and my response. I now have something ignited within me. And this is where it becomes personal. Because for me in college, my first go around was kind of a disaster. I went to university on a vocal scholarship, which after 1 year, I realized I did not want to be get a music degree. It was pointless for where I wanted to go in life. But I remember having an acquaintance of mine down the apartment complex Breezeway. She came over to talk to me one day and she knew my grades were terrible. And I told her, she goes, what are you doing? You're just throwing all this away. You have a scholarship and you're just throwing this whole thing away. What's the game plan here? And I said, look, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going. I know I'm bombing out right now. I'm very frustrated, but I can feel that there's something, the seed inside of me. And if I could figure out a way to germinate that seed and give it the proper environment for growth, then what I really need to be nourishing in my life and who I really am and what I really have to offer this world is going to come from that. I just don't know how to get it to sprout. I don't know how to get it to do that. But I never lost sight of that peace inside of me. And that's why reading those books and watching those movies, I had tears coming down my face watching the first and especially the second one because of the old feelings it was igniting inside of me that I felt the first go around reading those books years ago for the first time, which was Paul was feeling this piece of him that was uniquely him, that was starting to come to life because of the challenges, the extreme challenges he was facing. Because he had a choice: face the challenge, act like an animal, and die. Or act like a human and have something activated inside of him that he didn't know was there and start to hold that up as a focal point and live and possibly fulfill a destiny. So, in a lot of ways, especially as a young man, that appealed to me because I could feel the seed in the description of the story of Paul Atreides and how he was growing. And once he got to that desert planet of Dune, and once he took this concentrated poison that came from these huge worms that lived there in different sizes, and they would kill the worm in water because the water killed the worms. They were desert sand worms, huge. The water would kill them. They would extract this special concentration of their poison, and then you would drink that. And again, no man had ever survived it, but Paul did, and that was his final awakening. Harry says exactly, and like the Buddha, Paul wants to share this revelation with all sentient beings. We should all act like humans. Right. Thank you, Harry. That's exactly right. Because I've seen some people criticize the character of Paul as being this basically a selfish prick that was, as the word today is so commonly used, flippantly used, he was a narcissist. And I, like Harry, I think is suggesting here that's not exactly the case. Harry's bringing up the point. He had a discovery. He had a discovery of what it meant to be more fully alive and human. And he found the pathway where humanity finally can embrace that. But there was a lot of trial and tribulation and death that was going to take place before it would punch through to the other side, if you will. And if you know the story arc, it doesn't punch through with him, his life, but his progeny, his lineage. It punches through. You can say that that's how the last book ended. I like to think that it ended in that way. So, folks, when you watch these Dune books, there's so many messages there. Because I think Frank Herbert, the author of those books, he was a student of philosophy, a student of religion, a student of ecology, a student of geology, a student of human behavior, a student of agriculture. He understood so many things so well and how they worked. He understood religion so well, in particular, and fervor, and the ability for people to be swept up in a morphic field of influence that is so powerful that few can deny the gravity of it. And if you see today, this is what's going on because of social media, the ability to tap in to these crazy things at any given moment and get your next injection of the group think that you're a part of and have it infuse you and whip you up and draw you in to that zealotry, that whatever corner of the zealotry you're a part of, and keep you animated in a certain direction, or really complacent, animated towards complacency, if that's a thing. That's what we have to watch out. That is the message. Also the warning from Frank Herbert. Harry hit it. You know, this is to me is a tale of having accountability and the discovery of who we are truly as humanity. Because if we don't do that and we stagnate, like the story of Dune, humanity in those Dune stories, if we stagnate to the point of this living death, then what in the world are we going to be in 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 years? Who are we? Do we snuff out? Or do we have to get serious, at least a remnant of us, go, hey, we're not doing this. We're embracing what it means to be human and the potential that we have as human beings. We're not going to succumb to the tools. Doesn't mean you have to eradicate the tools, like from the Butlerian wars in the Dune books that happened before, that gave the humanity the impetus to create laws of no more thinking machines. Do we have to go there? No. There can be balance But we're not great at balance, most of humanity, at least the English-speaking Westerner part that I see out there. We're really good at extremes. And online, on technology, with these barriers, especially when nobody's even putting their face out there, not even their own identity, their real identity, we sit there and we voice these extreme positions just so we can have the friction of humanity, as opposed to having intimacy that we could be having in person. We have the false intimacy and connection of combat online with pseudonyms. That's what now is taking place as intimacy between humans, is some type of horrible name-calling verbal battle online. It's a terrible substitute. I think the message we should take from this is, fine, have the tools. They're not going to go away. But find balance with the tools. They're just tools. They're not the foundation for who we are as humans. They cannot be the substitute for what it means to be human. Harry says we have delved too far in devout materialism. Bingo. Another great point made by Harry. Not surprised. Yeah. In this life, to quote my Qigong master, materialism, is that a reality? It is. Is idealism, is that a reality? It is. So as my pursuit at this point at 53, my pursuit is, how do I, one, entrain, have coherence, align with that unmoved mover, that uncreated Wu Ji, all that is. How do I connect with that level of potentiality and somehow feel that through my human experience, and have the human experience, and yet also have some aspect of the wisdom that can be absorbed through adjusting our tuners as human into that Tao, that way, that all one uncreated, one infinite source of all things. How do we have that entrainment level to then bring the wisdom of that down through the Taoist idea, to stay on that track of that all uncreated energy, intelligence, created binary, polarity, yang and yin, masculine, feminine, that dance, not that war, not that battle of the sexes, but that dance. And then that created nature, great nature, the 5 elements, the 5 phases. So all that we know of on this planet as the cycles of nature, and all of that cycle of nature that is within us as well, because we are not separate from nature. We are a part of nature, a part of those cycles, no matter how much we insulate ourselves from it. We cannot divorce ourselves from that connection. And then we have this very beautiful dance of yang and yin constantly going on within us and with outside of us, this polarity dance. It's the pull of the polarity. It's the explosive nature of the dance that keeps life interesting, that creative power that is also from that uncreated place. That created power comes from the uncreated, eternal, immortal space into this existence. And so how do we bring it all together to where we can have that beautiful eternal knowing? I don't have a fear of death anymore, one would think, if I have that access to at least some of that eternal feeling, and also have this very, very short human experience with all of its uniqueness. How do I do both of those things? How do I walk that golden path of one foot in that never ever has an ending or a beginning, and the other foot into this existence, which is a very finite experience? And then how do I walk those? How do I be in the world and yet not of it? Meaning, how do I acknowledge that I have 2 aspects of soul? I have one aspect of soul that is eternal, that the Chinese call the Hun, Hun. We won't go too deep into that. That's another broadcast altogether for just that topic. And then we have what's called the Po, which you could just roughly say that is the spirit that is a part of this body. It's what animates this body. And it's this body, when it ceases to work, that Po stays here with it while the Hun moves keeps its eternal journey going. Very Taoist, very basic Taoist principles. And so the idea is, how do I lift this very Po earthly existence up? And then how do I, in my opinion, how do I then take this lofty yet all around us uncreated aspect and merge it together, have the awareness that all of that is happening here right now. It's not some other place way out there. This is my earthly experience, and my heavenly existence is some place away, like a two-dimensioned universal experience, but it's all here. There's nowhere to go. You don't go to these places. You actually have to create an awareness of them so you can align with them and have all of that experience going on simultaneously. And then a lot of our angst and a lot of our concerns about how to live this life and why are we here and where is it going, it all, I think, starts to become clear, because the thing that you don't want anymore, which is what was also pointed out to me by reading those Dune books early on in my life and watching these movies, was that even the desire for me to not leave this existence before I have fulfilled my potential is still a form of imprisonment and a trap, and my own personal hell if I let it be that. Because if I, in my brief moments of having the limited human experience of trying to entrain with that uncreated eternal aspect of all that is, I can feel the need and the desire and the satisfaction, feeling satiated by having all of these things fulfilled. That isn't a part of that existence. There is no constant striving and needing for the next step on the rungs of a ladder. That's not a part of that eternal existence. The desire to want and to have to possess something is a trap. And every good Buddhist, every good Taoist, I think, understands this, and many other probably wonderful little philosophies, and might even be called religions, have these ideas of attachment and desire actually being the root of your imprisonment and your own personal hell. Now, how does that fit with Dune? A few ways, but it's 7:47 Eastern Standard Time, and I'm running out of time. So I don't know. How am I going to summarize this? Read the Dune books. Don't read them as just sci-fi, at least the first three. The first three are all about, well, they're all six about humanity and how complex we are and what human interaction and community looks like. It's all about that. He was a genius in writing about those dynamics. And I have to say one last thing about reading the books and watching these first two movies. I felt such an absolute familiarity with watching these people on that desert planet live in such a beautiful, brutal, but beautiful, harmonious in its own way, tribal setting. I felt something call in me so deeply. I told this to Angel, and she goes, "The desert?" Because she knows the whole idea of no moisture freaks her out too. I was like, no, not the desert part, but the tribal closeness, the understanding of having rites of passage and knowing your position in the tribe. I could feel something ancient inside of me going, oh my gosh, I so want that. I want that type of life. And to know there's still people on this planet that still live that way is amazing. But my heritage has long left that type of existence. Now it just feels like isolation. And when it started in 2020, there was a massive worldwide feeling of isolation, and it was demoralizing. And watching that Dune 2 last night, I could feel that ancient call inside of me in my bones that ached for that type of existence and connection again. So the last piece of what those books and movies have meant to me is the reminder of what community could feel like potentially, but what we have to do internally so we can have community and it not turn into a war zone. Who are we going to be? Who are we going to choose to be? Are we going to embrace our individual power that is in the context of owning your own space, taking up your space, and also having compassion for yourself and others? Can we hold all that simultaneously? Learn how to live lovingly with each other with kindness and not place our wants, hopes, and dreams on some messianic figure, whether it's political or religious or both? Can we step away from that old habit and start to make this life a personal and community experience? Can we do that? Thank you all for listening to me ramble on for 50 minutes about books and movies that I love and still to this day bring me to tears watching it because of what it pokes inside of me and brings to my attention that needs to be a focal point for me to do some harmonization work with, and also to make a focal point for me to fine tune the trajectory of my life, which in some ways shouldn't be about me striving, but about me living in harmony with this existence, those around me, and with all of eternity. Thank you all. I'll see you soon.